VCNS, Admiral Gormade, Admiral Kocher, Commandant, National Defense Academy, delegates and guests, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for the first session of the seminar, which is present challenges for shipbuilding in India, and also the way ahead, if I may call it as a very topical topic. And I use this word topical from the point of view that this topic has been discussed many a times on various fora. But the fact that it continues to be discussed probably signifies the importance, and it also underlines the need that the shipbuilding industry needs a lot of encouragement, a lot of incentives, a lot of reforms, or whatever you may like to call it. Because today, that to me is the need of the hour, because the shipbuilding industry of what it was, say probably 2 or 3 decades earlier and today, I personally feel that not much of change has happened, especially in the private shipyards. With an overall defense export figure of close to about 15,000 crores, and looking at an order book value of about 100,000 crores, the shipbuilding export figures are very, very marginal. They're probably in decimals. And therefore, there is actually a crying need that we look at shipbuilding exports to be coming up in a much, much larger way. If you look at the spread of the shipyards across the country, roughly about 28 of them, we have 20 private shipyards, in addition to the government-owned shipyards. And if you look at the business distribution of this 100,000 crore order book value on shipbuilding, and if I see what goes across to the private shipyards, it is nearly absent. And that is the cause of concern, because that is where we need to concentrate on, and that is where probably as a part of this session, our speakers will elaborate what are the remedies that are there, which we need to look at on how to get the private shipyards back into the fray so that there is a growth in this much needed sector. So we have with us for the first session, 3 speakers. The first speaker from Goa Shipyard, Captain Sunil Kumar. From Garden Reach, Captain Sunil Kumar. His biodata has been elaborated in the brochure that's been given. He joined the GRSE in 2016, and thereafter has been handling GRSE's corporate plans and business strategy, and has thereafter been promoted to Chief General Manager in July 22, and thereafter picking on what should be the ways that we need to get the private shipyards, or into how to get the exports of shipping into the entire game plan of the country. So may I request Captain Sunil Kumar to please take the dais. Some of the rules of the game for all the 3 speakers. May I request all speakers to conform to the 20-minute time frame that has been allocated. At the 18th minute, I'll give you a warning with 1 bell and 2 bells once you're done in terms of time. All yours.
I'll check. Thank you, sir. Vice Admiral Gormade, the Vice Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Kocher, Commandant NDA, Vice Admiral Pasricha, Captain Anand Dikshit, President IMF, and other very senior dignitaries present here today. I'm actually overwhelmed standing here in this August gathering. And I must confess that this is the first time I'm speaking that even though I am the first speaker of the day as the session is concerned, I have very little to offer in terms of new ideas. But definitely, I have the experience of last 6 years in doing corporate affairs and business development in GRSE. Day in and day out, I've been interacting with the powers that be in the Ministry of Defense as well as the Ministry of Shipping. So maybe I will just try to throw in a little bit more light on what exactly we can do. At the outset, Sincere thanks to IMF for organizing this special session on present challenges of shipbuilding in India and the way ahead. Since morning, it has already been established that this is the need of the hour to propel India towards regaining its past glory and the fame as a shipbuilding and seafaring nation. In fact, I am more thankful to Admiral Pasricha for establishing the base of our history in shipbuilding, and the Vice Chief Sir for telling us a lot of things on how we need to do to go ahead. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was attending a similar seminar on East Connect, where the CIA was discussing exactly the same thing, and a number of people present here, that is the shipbuilders, were also present there. So we have been discussing this topic quite a lot, and I'm quite hopeful that in the near future, we will see concrete action coming out as a result of these discussions. Next slide, please. I've tried to keep my talk simple. I'm going to just cover this in 3 topics. Why shipbuilding industry for India, which I will rush through because it has already been established. Then challenges, they've been already spoken about, but a few more from my side. And of course, who needs to do what from the perspective that I've gathered in my personal experience. Believe it or not, India has been building ships for nearly 5,000 years. In fact, the Marathas, I'm talking about this because I'm in Pune. The Marathas under Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, as you know, have a very rich history in shipbuilding and naval warfare. Recently, I had the honor to be present on board Vikrant when the Prime Minister gave the ensign, the new naval ensign, to the Indian Navy. And the Indian Navy has acknowledged Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's contribution to our maritime history by drawing inspiration for the new ensign, which was unfurled that day on 2nd September. You're all well aware that modern shipbuilding in India began way back in 1735. In fact, just to tell you, the ships that we built in India lasted for more than 30-35 years, while those that the British made lasted just 12 to maybe 15 years. And in those days, a concentrated effort was made by the British to put down the Indian shipbuilding industry. My aim in going through all this is just to debunk some myths. One of these is that the Europeans are pioneers of shipbuilding. It is not. We need to stake claim to our heritage and history. So the topic of today's seminar, towards deliberating in helping India regain its past glory as a seafaring nation, especially when we've just become the 5th largest economy in the world, and of course, we hope to achieve a 5 trillion target very soon. It has been revised, but hopefully the newly set target of 2027 should be met. You'll be surprised to know that quite recently, as way back in 2009, we were 5th in terms of shipbuilding in the global scenario. But today, I think we are way beyond 20 also. If you have to believe reports in the open domain, our shipbuilding contracts, especially in the merchant marine, is less than 1% in terms of DWT, that is. Now, this has to be seen as a more bigger of an opportunity and a challenge to convert this opportunity. One of the major challenges is the absence of an ecosystem for shipbuilding in the country. I'm sure that people in Pune will be very familiar with ecosystem, especially with the auto industry really having a great ecosystem here. So this city, as mentioned earlier, definitely has a lot of potential. I come from Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers, one of the leading defense shipyards in the country, and the only one of its kind on the Eastern India. At GRSE, we have built and delivered over 100 warships to our maritime defense forces. And overall, our count stands at 788 vessels since inception. The ship INS Ajay has been mentioned before, is GRSE's rare distinction of having built the first warship for Indian Navy in India way back in 1961. With the Indian Navy and the Indian Coast Guard on the lookout for modern warships, at GRSC, we have built the anti-submarine warfare corvettes and achieved 90% indigenous content, which is a testament to our quest for Atmanirbharta. Today, GRSC is implementing an order book close to 24,000 crores and building 17 ships across 5 major projects, including one for export. So what does this mean in economic terms? It means that thousands of crores have gone to companies, not only shipyard, to companies including MSMEs that supplied equipment and spares, while hundreds of crores have been expended in engaging skilled and unskilled labor. It means that thousands of jobs have been created, either directly or indirectly. Just to give you some statistics, in financial year 21-22, GRSC procured approximately 600 crores worth of material from MSMEs. Further, as we progress the execution of our order book, you can well imagine how much of this book is going to get pumped back into the local and national economy. The impact it will have on the economy, you can guess. We're already bottomed. It's a fair estimate that about 65% of the value addition in a new construction ship comes from manufacturers of shipboard material, equipment, and system. The shipyard itself adds only 35%. I am glad that these figures have already been endorsed at the highest level. Recently, when Admiral Harikumar visited GRSC for the launch of a warship there, he said that 29 warships are being built at Indian shipyards and 39 more are being progressed. Now, Indian Navy is aspiring to be a 200 Navy warship, and so is the Indian Coast Guard. The targets are 2025 and 2027. So, I foresee a rising demand for the commercial vessels also, since the pandemic is receding and commercial shipbuilding is again taking off. But does it mean that the Indian shipbuilding industry is doing great? No. Unfortunately, it is not. We are not even scratching the surface of the global shipbuilding potential. But based on my experiences, which I told earlier, I can tell you that clear steps are being contemplated and hopefully taken in the near future by the government and other stakeholders to address issues at hand. Some of the issues I will highlight subsequently. But all of us here should be proud that the Indian Navy has always led the way for shipbuilding in India. So much so that there is an interesting, in 2020, the consultancy firm KPMG came out with an excellent report on leveraging defense shipbuilding to catalyze India's shipbuilding industry. Another demand center for domestic shipbuilding is the ship repair and maintenance industry. Given the strategic location of India in international sea routes, this segment has huge potential for developing the shipbuilding industry. And this potential, we already started tapping it, as you've seen at CSL and L&T. On 12th May 2020, our Honorable Prime Minister raised a clarion call to the nation, giving a kickstart to the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. It's there everywhere today. This campaign is the vision of New India envisaged by the Honorable Prime Minister. The aim is to make the country and its citizens independent and self-reliant in all senses. With India's 7,516 kilometer coastline and the need for sustained maritime influence for our growth, indigenous shipbuilding is inherently important to national security. Next slide, please. Next. Yeah, now just a few challenges that most of it have been already mentioned, but one thing we must understand is that what sets this industry apart from others. Ships are capital and labor intensive. Even a medium-sized vessel, whether a warship or a commercial one, costs several hundred crores. One also needs to take note is a diverse nature of equipment that goes into the making of a ship. Now today, I'm talking about commercial. Go green is a focus for global fleet operators and ship owners. Shipbuilders worldwide are in a dilemma as to what shall be the new powering solutions in future. The Indian shipbuilding industry, as you know, is anchored by around 27 to 30. Numbers vary here and there, both private and public, and has a reported capacity to build large vessels up to 4 lakh DWT. But the industry presently is performing well below its true potential. There are many structural gaps in the industry. Overdependence on defense shipbuilding, lack of orders for commercial shipbuilding, and poor access to finance, I would say, is central to all other challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, while the shipyards play an important role in shipbuilding, I believe that the ancillary industry plays an even vital role. At JRSC, we have endeavored to create an entire ecosystem of shipbuilding in the region, and I will not say that we have been very successful. Apart from placing orders with local industry, more than 60% of our local procurement came from MSMEs in FY 21-22, and we hope to continue this procurement. We have also tied up with other shipyards, which has already been mentioned to use. L&T was mentioned, but we are also working with TWL to use their idle capacity today, with some of the smaller vessels being built at Titagarh. We are also keen to work with other capable shipbuilders to build vessels for the inland waterways and even for exports, because I see that is the only option and the way forward. GRC has tied up with the Shama Prasad Mukherjee Port of Calcutta for the use of dry docks, which were lying unutilized earlier, thereby addressing the need for such facilities along the East Coast. Most of you would be aware that a large part of the ship repair work, non-OEM related, is outsourced by shipyards to MSMEs with the requisite capabilities. So in all I'm trying to say is that collaboration is the key to success in shipbuilding. Another word of caution that I would like to put forth is that the experience in undertaking procurement from MSMEs and local ancillary is not short of challenges. So while attempting to become part of the domestic, and I would say more importantly, the global shipbuilding supply chain, I urge the industry players and especially the MSMEs to kindly note of certain key factors like quality assurance, project management, technical know-how, and financial prudence. Major challenges, some more, is that ships are unique and non-standard, especially when we go to defense, and our size and scale have not reached levels so that we can become globally competitive. This is what we must aim at. Be globally competitive rather than being competitive within the country. Skilled labor, if the shipbuilding industry has a gap, labor tends to migrate. We need to look at how we can have a continuous employment of this labor. Very, very important thing is financial stress. We are all aware of large shipyards buckling down because of financial stress. Then the logistic infrastructure in the country, though it is improving, is not really come to the state that you can build things in very different places, ship it to one place for integration and things like that. This is where maybe the coastal shipping and the inland waterways might come in to play a big role. Major challenge, presence of OEMs, example, manufacturer of engines. We do not have here today. And nobody is going to come and start if you don't have scale. These are the issues that needs to be addressed at the grassroots levels. Now, in the absence of a domestic ancillary industry, shipyards have to rely on foreign manufacturers, and you are well aware how difficult it is for a public sector shipyard to get a GTE. Now, on the global scale, earlier we were worried about maybe Japan, Korea, then came in China. Today, till Vietnam and Philippines are also marching ahead. Now, Sri Lanka was also there, but recently they've taken a setback. But these are all issues, global issues that we need to look at and internally consolidate and collaborate so that, as India, we fight the battle. People will be surprised to note that the labor costs in India are high. Though we perceive our labor to be cheap, when you compare it globally, it is not so. I am told, in fact, I've read a report which says in Japan, you can make a ship at 25% lesser cost considering all factors. Everyone says we need to improve our efficiency. Our man hours per CGT is very high, but people don't realize that the weather in Korea or Japan and the weather in India, where a person has to do labor, is totally different. But yes, we need to strike a balance and we need to become globally competitive. Another one interesting point which I remember from Admiral Harish, who ex-DGND, is that he said a shipyard has to sell first and construct later. Whereas, unlike most other industries, the seller manufactures first and then sells later. An important aspect which actually requires a lot of support from the government to ensure, at least in the starting stages, that it is set right. Next slide, please. Yeah, now coming to some action areas. Many of this has already been spoken about regarding an institution that can advise the government on national maritime policy, including commercial and defense sector. Why I'm saying this is presently individual ministries are working individually and the synergy and the focus is not there to get us results. In fact, this should be something I would say akin to a Gati Shakti program where a combination of around 17 to 18 ministries has been done so far. Now the government needs to create by law, I'm saying by law, a stream of funding for shipbuilding projects to ship owners. This is one aspect which so far has not been touched upon, but who are you building the ships for? Especially the commercial ones. For the ship owners, what is his skin in the game? That needs to be addressed. Because I am working on these kind of challenges so that the commercial shipbuilding orders take off. The shipbuilding industry has been given infrastructure status, but to the ship owners, the loans are not coming through. The shipbuilders, especially the public sector, may not be in need of loan, but for the private shipbuilding, the small players, loans are required and need to be facilitated. Mention was made about taxation. I just want to highlight that the input tax is 18% for many items. Output, that is the tax that GST that we can claim at the time of sale of the ship is 5%. And the time gap for a shipbuilding project ranges normally from 18 months, 36 or beyond. It is for you to imagine what is the working capital that is locked up, and the element of taxation in the tax difference itself becomes a very big chunk. Needs to be addressed. People have been made aware of these kind of things at the highest possible forum, but unfortunately the GST Council does not discuss these issues. The subsidy scheme, yes, I recommend that it should go to 30% and it should be continued further. There was a talk about discontinuing this policy, but that is not going to happen. In my recent discussions with the IWA and the Ministry of Shipping, I am told that they are thinking of increasing it to 30%. So hopefully it should come through. Then the policy, the Indian Maritime Vision 2030 document, much talked about, but doesn't address seriously shipbuilding issues. Talks about port, infrastructure development, inland waterways, and various other aspects. In fact, somebody was mentioning that the shipbuilding budget has been hijacked for port development. So that's how things are presently, because shipbuilding has not yet received the true attention that it requires. So one major challenge is to transform all these initiatives like what we have heard so much about, port modernization, Sagarmala, inland waterways, everything, to concrete orders. You will be surprised to know that 9 designs have been made by the IWA, uploaded on their website from 2019. Till now, there's no consensus on which ship to build. That needs to be addressed. Hopefully, in the next coming 3 to 6 months, there's a competition going on for identifying that. It will happen. Then I was discussing with I'm going into practical aspects because the theory has already been covered a lot. I was discussing with a ship operator. He wants to buy a ship. And he came to us saying, can you buy a ship which can work on the Hooghly? Can it go on to the Brahmaputra? Why? Because of the Indo-Bangladesh protocol. there is a lot of potential. To move goods in the northeast, there is a lot of potential, but the rivers are the easiest. But we can't do night navigation there. So you can travel only during the day. And that too, anybody who has traversed the Brahmaputra would know how the river shifts and the depth conditions. So these things have to be addressed at the government level. Government is working on it. In fact, you would be surprised to know that there are dredging contracts in place, but depths are not available. So these issues need to be addressed. That's why I said a lot of things the government has to act upon. We can only be supporting caste in these issues. Shipbuilding clusters clearly mentioned. The Vice Chief Sir has already mentioned the clusters coming up. Hopefully, they will do well. And we need to leverage our diplomacy and trade agreements to persuade globally renowned ancillary companies to set up manufacturing bases in our country. They need to be given incentives. Our DAs have been given 50,000 US dollars every year to promote defense equipment abroad. Only 20% of it has been used so far. Then one most very important thing that I want to suggest is at the bottom, that is, we need to boost our exports, and the present setup of export promotion needs to be revamped. We need to create bodies such as SIBAP in Israel and Rosoboron Export, which everybody may be aware of from Russia, with a mandate for identifying potential export projects and achieving the export targets. In terms of FDI, you may be happy to note that a team from India, a government level team, is in UAE searching for FDI with a member from GRSE. The major shipyards need to collaborate now. Next, please. This has already been told. Collaboration is the key. We need to increase our operational efficiencies, and one way is to adopt internationally acknowledged matrices and try to meet them to the best of our ability. We need to use our local demand as an opportunity to build up long-term capability in the next 10 years and become competent internationally. We can't wait to let the opportunity come. We need to be ready to grab. And we need to focus on standardization of non-critical components for use across shipyards for different types of vessels. Identify dual-use equipment in consonance with the maritime forces to achieve higher production volumes and their sustainability. Also, we need to institutionalize a mechanism for carrying out vendor identification, evaluation, and registration, which can be ported across shipyards. Now it is being done individually. And yes, invest in own R&D to evolve new products ahead of global players. We should not be followers. Focus on leveraging the government initiatives such as IDEX and MRGS. MRGS is not a gun, it is Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti. In conclusion, the Ministry of Ports, next please. The Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways website states that the nodal responsibility of the entire shipbuilding and ship repair industry in India vests with the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways. With the Government of India working toward development of national waterways, there is potential for huge demand for barges and small ships. And if the recent initiatives by IWF bear fruit, a new chapter in shipbuilding for inland transportation is about to be scripted. The last few years, the Navy has also been in the forefront for addressing challenges in shipbuilding. So I would like to conclude on a positive note by stating that the future is very bright for shipbuilding, as all the ingredients are there. However, the shipbuilders, the ancillary industry, and the government needs to put the right foot forward and convert this existing challenge into golden opportunity. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thanks. Our next speaker is Commander Saurabh Jain from the Goa Shipyard. He joined Goa Shipyard in 2017 and thereafter has steered various critical initiatives and policies to improve the operational efficiency of the yard. Presently, he is working on their prestigious project, which is the 1135 project, which is being built in India. And today he is going to talk about the enhancement of exports by shipyards and the challenges to be overcome. Commander Jim, the stage is yours.
Thank you, sir. Vice Admiral Gormade, ECNS, Vice Admiral Kochar, Commandant NDA, senior officers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm representing Warship Limited, and it's an honor for me to be present my views on the Indian shipbuilding and related exports. I aim to put forth my analysis on Indian shipbuilding industry and enhancement of exports of defense platforms. The presentation will be covered in the following heads. Before going to the analysis of export, I'd like to touch upon the Indian share of global imports, which stands at a huge 11% presently on an average. This is due to the requirement of maintaining a sizable armed forces with state-of-the-art technology. However, in the bargain, our reliance on imports has been too high. Though we have tried a lot to manufacturing under license or TOT, but our dependence still remains very high. And we have not been able to shed the tag of largest importer, one of the largest importers. Now, talking about exports, the things are changing for good. As you can see on this graph, that the exports have risen in the last 5 to 10 years at a rate of 35% CAGR to cross 13,000 crores in 21-22, and that is rising from around 2015-16. Though we have risen to about 23rd rank as per CIPRI, our share is limited to only 0.17% of the global exports, and this is quite alarming. Though MOD has set a target of $5 billion by 2025, and a lot of initiatives have been taken in this regard, and results are also coming, but we need to do much better. About 3 decades back, the European and American shipyards enjoyed a major share of global shipbuilding. The Japanese during 1960 to 90, Koreans post 90, and Chinese have emerged as a major shipbuilding nation. They presently account for almost 80% of the annual ship production in terms of tonnage. India, as this has been brought out in the previous presentations also, it's just about 1% presently, and which need to be scaled up. And my talk today essentially focuses on increasing this share. Let's now look at the current shipbuilding capability of Indian shipyards. Presently, we have 4 DPSUs, which are operating under administrative control of Ministry of Defense, followed by CSL, which is operating under the administrative control of Ministry of Shipping. And among the private players, we have major is L&T and supported by various other smaller shipyards. Presently, the export order book of shipyards is just about 0.4% of the current order book position of approximately 90 to 1,100,000 crores, as Admiral Deshpande had clearly brought out in his opening talk. Since the design and construction of majority of the platforms is indigenous, I feel it's the right time to unleash this export potential of Indian shipyards and the ancillary industry. This slide shows the current order book position of PSU shipyards, which totals to about 1,13,000 crores presently. Annually, the turnover, if you see, is just about 12,000 crores annually for these PSU shipyards. However, because of the modernization which have been undertaken in the past, and which everybody of us keeps crying that we have spare capacity, I think we can safely assume we have a capacity of about 1.5 times. Though, so combinedly, the shipyards can do about 17,000 crores annually on an average presently. This is an analysis of the capital budget. This is only for the shipbuilding. On an average, we've been spending about 10,000 crores annually. And even if we optimistically assume it will grow by a rate of about 8%, it will touch about just about 24,000 by 2030. Though it will get determined by a lot of budgetary constraints, political will, procedures, and technical hurdles. Now, comparing the statistics which I have shown in the last two slides, if envisaged capacity of shipyards and the capital expenditure on defense shipbuilding are compared, we see a significant surplus capacity which is available with the shipyards, which can be gainfully utilized for exports. I'm talking about this blue shaded region. Having talked about the capacity of Indian shipyards for exports, I'll now touch upon the global shipbuilding scenario. World military expenditure in 2020 was estimated at 1981 billion USD. The share of global shipbuilding has risen from share of GDP, global GDP, it has risen from 2.2 to 2.4%, hinting at higher military expenditure. Though initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat has been a great enabler in self-reliance, export is the required thrust and an enabler to offset these imports and give the required numbers to the Indian defense industry to sustain in the future. In the global arms exports, US tops the chart with 33% share with 9.9 billion USD annually. As I heard earlier, India is way down at 0.17%. On the contrary, India has a tag of second largest importer of defense equipment, only behind Saudi Arabia. In the next 20 to 30 years, there is an opportunity of about 835 billion USD for the defense shipbuilding. As the slide shows, most lucrative business is the petrol craft business, which is about 250 billion USD up to 2030, and for which there is no dearth of experience or expertise or capability with the Indian shipyards, and which needs to be certainly leveraged. This is analysis of the defense shipbuilding deals in the past few years, which shows that mostly the demand is coming from the developing countries who are looking to secure their coastal areas and increase their areas of influence. This slide depicts the top 10 developing countries where the demand is coming from. These countries are not only looking to purchase, but also generate self-reliance through TOT and collaborations. Data of last 5 years supports that the petrol crafts are the most widely sold products. 81% of the demand is generated through petrol crafts, FSCs, frigates, OPVs, and submarines. An analysis of the export market reveals that market will witness the development of less expensive warships, and customer will prefer construction in its own country under license or TOT. UK and US warships are generally found to be too sophisticated and very expensive, and they're not very attractive. Therefore, US and UK warships are facing a stiff competition from European shipbuilders, particularly Germany, France, and Russia. Germany and France together have more than 60% of the military export market of naval shipbuilding contracts. Russian shipyards used to have a thriving export business, and their biggest customers were India, Vietnam, and Algeria. However, of late, due to the geopolitical situation, their business is sliding down. China shipbuilders are becoming increasingly competitive in terms of ratio to cost to combat power they can deliver. In this scenario, Indian shipyards can focus on developing countries whose numbers are as high as 195. These countries do not want very high sophisticated or technologically high-end platforms due to their fund constraints, which makes cheaper products offered by Indian shipyards much more attractive. These are the few recent exports. I have cited a few examples which successfully Indian shipyards have exported. 4 of these successful exports amounting to about 200 billion USD have been done by GSL. And recently, we are executing one Sri Lankan dock for the Sri Lankan Navy. Others have been patrol boats, auxiliary craft, various by GRSE and L&T. If you note, these exports were related to small and mid-sized vessels catering to requirements of developing countries. Thus, Indian shipyards need to market these products and look to capture a larger pie of the global exports of these vessels. There is also a need to have a long-term partnership with upcoming defense hubs in aspiring countries such as Australia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. These countries have shown a strong growth in their defense industry and now are focusing on developing indigenous capabilities. These countries are ready to collaborate, which should be leveraged by Indian shipyards. In today's interdependent supply chain, there is an opportunity for Indian industry to be part of the global supply chain of major global players. Part construction, joint ventures, etc., are another model of gaining international exposure. MSMEs, which has been covered in detail in the previous presentation, have a great potential in this field, and they can be Indian offset partners. Another aspect to ponder is the availability of expertise and capability of advanced weapon-intensive platforms such as destroyers, frigates, and corvettes in the country, which has not been tapped for export market. These platforms are high value, with each frigate costing about 500 billion USD, corvette on an average about 300. It is forecasted that the frigate market will witness 368 new hulls over the next 20 years, with a total acquisition value of about 183 billion USD, making up for about 15% of the global defense market. Therefore, even a small pie will give a major boost to our exports. And on top of that, these indigenous platforms can be fitted with indigenous systems recently developed, such as BrahMos, Hamsa, IRL, ITTL, SAM systems. The list goes on. There is no denying that Russia has been one of the best design houses in the varied designs of defense platforms. However, in the current geopolitical situation, Russia will find it hard to sell these products as it has been doing in the past with ease. India has a past experience in manufacturing a lot of products, in fact, platforms under collaboration with Russia, such as 124 REs. Now we are doing 1135. This provides an opportunity to collaborate these and market these products with Russian design, where the design can come from Russia and these platforms can be manufactured in Indian shipyards. Another opportunity is driven by growing tensions in Asia Pacific region due to Chinese threats of expansionism into the East and Southeast seas, especially over the 9-dash line. This opportunity needs to be created into orders from countries such as Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Myanmar, Thailand. So a lot of initiatives have been taken in the past, but not much has got realized into orders. Having covered the opportunities, now let's look at a few of the steps taken by government to boost exports. Some of this has already been covered in the previous slide, which I will skip through. Defense Production Export Promotion Policy 2020. It is an overarching guiding document. Export promotion cell has been set up at DDP MOD, which is highly proactive. It has been coordinating with all the stakeholders, potential countries, PSUs, private sector. They've been calling everybody and making them interact during the bilateral and the G2G meetings. The foreign trade policy has export promotion schemes, exemption on duties and tax and other facilitative measures. The export promotion body advises the government towards promoting exports. Now, leveraging embassies and diplomatic channels, this also has been covered previously. The engagement of with defense sachets have been done at the very highest level. Financial support, though it has not been utilized in the appropriately, but a lot of financial support has been given to defense attaches to market Indian products. There have been 85 countries which have been notified under class A, B, and C, with Cat A having the highest potential for exports. More and more industries and PSUs are being included in the bilateral meetings with potential countries. Another thing is that private firms are being facilitated to make use of certificates issued by government agencies for marketability of their products overseas. In 1920 alone, 10 such certificates were issued, certifying that their products were fit for military use. Exim Bank is providing lucrative financing schemes for the defense LOCs, something like line of credit and buyer's credit. Out of 4.3 billion LOCs allotted, 930 million has been related to defense LOCs, which is just about 25%. DAP 2022 has a provision for IDDM, giving preference to Indian companies. Strategic partnership model allows Indian companies to collaborate with foreign OEMs and absorb the TOT and upskill. Now, for the first time, Indian government is putting a ban on itself for importing products and trying to boost the indigenous manufacturing. The first positive list was promulgated in August 20, second in May 21, third in April 22, and recently in August 22, about 2,500 items have been notified. SOPs for the export of munition items have been simplified. Powers have been delegated to DRDOs and CMDs of PSUs to promote exports and obtain relevant export orders. NOC for export orders have been simplified as immediate NOC is given for repeat orders of same product to same entity. In the next few slides, I'll discuss the strengths and weaknesses of Indian shipbuilding industry. We have all been discussing about this 1%. So I think the modest target would be to go up to about 5% by about 2027. And repair segment, presently market share is just about 2% to go up to about 10%. The design capability of Indian industry is currently quite strong and capable. In the last 60 years, it has produced sophisticated designs of advanced platforms such as aircraft carriers, destroyers, frigates, corvettes, etc., which are comparable to best in the industry. D&D has done a stellar role, as we have discussed in the previous few talks also. They have done about 19 designs which got translated into 90 ships. And what I'm trying to say is the capabilities available within India. And shipyards also have now evolved from doing mid-sized vessels and auxiliary vessels. They are doing the most sophisticated warship designs, ASW shallow water craft, NGOPVs, then new generation missile vessels. All this being done by shipyards themselves. That speaks volumes of the capability. Low labor cost is one of the major factors Indian shipyards to be competitive and edge out global players. So what are the problem areas? There are very limited yards which can do more than 10,000 tonnage of ships. So that is the constraint what we have right now. Presently, Indian shipyards are contented in vying for Indian shipbuilding orders and not very aggressive in international contracts. Past track record of time and cost overruns and affected the brand image. Lack of experience in big international shipbuilding orders has not helped either. Lack of indigenous equipment, this also be covered, like main engines, propulsion and all, and some of the weapon sensors. This not available in India, sourcing from abroad is a bit costly, affecting the costing, overall costing. Availability of skilled and experienced manpower is also a matter of concern. Absence of strong ancillary industry is also affecting performance. Synergy between government and private shipyards is almost non-existent. Whatever is happening between shipyards and the private industry is only through tendering process and identifying which are long, tedious, and not a very long-term solution. So this needs to be formalized for a strategic partnerships between the private and the public shipyards. Capital intensive industry, yes, all of us know that it's very capital intensive industry, and a lot of big shipyards have failed. Coming to the recommendations, sir. I'll just rush through these points because I think the time is running out. Demand for potential overseas customers needs to be identified and pursued. Diplomatic assets needs to be leveraged. Continuous monitoring and upcoming and existing opportunities. There is a very interesting development which has taken place. Something known as National Bank of Strategic Capability Development is being set up, which is primarily to fund the MSMEs and the Indian defense sector, wherein initially 100 crores will be allocated by the government, and the offset obligations which are not met, those firms will be told to give loans under this to different MSMEs or private players, so they can raise capital for exploring export opportunities as well as indigenous requirements. Joint ventures, TOT, should be widely encouraged. adoption of multi-shipyard modular block construction strategy in line with the global trend, collaboration and multinational along the lines of European projects. Investment in R&D should be encouraged. Development of maritime clusters should be implemented. Defense corridors in Tamil Nadu and UP have been the steps in the right direction. Shipbuilding industry should coordinate with academia. One major point I want to make here is that the government shipyards, especially the PSUs, experience challenges in following government guidelines, procedures, which certainly affect their competitiveness and the costing. So this majorly has to be linked with how more autonomy can be given to PSUs. Participation of MSMEs cannot be discounted. Right now, we have about 8,643 MSMEs working in the defense sector. It should be targeted to at least 16,000 in the next 3 years if we really want to give boost to the exports and the indigenous defense industry. In my conclusion, I would like to just draw your attention to this graph, sir. Currently, our defense manufacturing is hovering at about 70,000 crores, which is likely to grow at 13.5% CAGR, and by 2025, it's likely the government has a target of 1,70,000 to 75,000 crores. In the present estimates, about 1,000 crores will go into the requirement of domestic defense requirements, and there will be a surplus of about 70 to 75,000, which needs to be utilized for exports. Concluding, sir, I would like to reiterate that Indian shipbuilding has a huge potential to expand and to be a major player in global shipbuilding. Disruptive changes are essential, and R&D needs to emphasis in design of future-ready ships. In addition to defense ships, policy framework should promote local construction of merchant marine as well. Lastly, government should look at synergizing efforts between PSUs, private, R&D, and academia to achieve the aim of achieving $5 billion USD exports by 2025. Thank you, Anjay.
Thank you, sir. Our next topic for the first session is by Captain Sudhakar, who is the officer in charge of the Center of Excellence at INS Shivaji. And he would be talking about the challenges in integrating CAT-C items in warship building. May I request Sudhakar, please take this.
Vice Admiral Satish Gourmede, Vice Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Ajay Kochar, Commandant National Defence Academy, Vice Admiral E.M. Deshpande, Honorable Chair of the session, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. It's a privilege for me to take part in a forum like this with participation of so many stalwarts and senior officers and industry moguls of shipbuilding industry. Also, I'm very happy to share the dais with my commandery. Commander Jain was my commandery on board Ranvijay, and I was a senior engineer, and we were a formidable team on board. I shall be presenting my paper on the topic challenges in integrating CAT-C items in warship building. I think after two back-to-back presentations on the holistic and the big picture of the shipbuilding trends in the world and the country, my paper might appear to be a total phase shift, talking about pumps, valves, nuts, and bolts. While although a very narrowed zone, it's still important. And, I shall be covering my presentation under the following heads. So I'll continue with the scripts. The maritime perspective The Maritime Capability Perspective Plan envisages force levels of about 200 ships by 2027, in line with the government's vision of transforming Indian Navy from buyer's Navy to builder's Navy. Concurrent warship building activity is underway across multiple shipyards in the country. About 39 ships and submarines are at various stages of construction, while orders for 33 platforms are likely to be placed in the near future. Warship construction program involves purchase of a large number of items from numerous indigenous and foreign suppliers. This paper focuses on issues pertaining to a particular class of items which are procured by the shipyards from the indigenous industry, more so from the ecosystem of the MSMEs that work in collaboration with the shipyards. A brief background about the topic before I discuss the challenges. The equipment supplied for construction of new warships is broadly classified into 4 categories, as flashed on slide. Cat A items are procured by the shipyards from the vendors nominated by the Navy on SDA basis and are to conform to the promulgated SOTRs. Items under Cat B are procured by the shipyard from the vendors shortlisted and approved by the Navy on LTA basis and are to conform to the promulgated SOTRs. Cat C items comprise mainly the COTS equipment, which can be procured by the shipyards from any vendor. In this case, only the generic specifications of the equipment are provided by the Navy. Cat C star items include general equipment which can be sourced from any vendor by the shipyard. These items are required to conform to the specifications promulgated by the Navy. Examples of various items with their categorization are flashed on slide. A review of the progress of new construction warships in various shipyards reveals that the management of Cat C and Cat C star items is a common bottleneck causing delays. The most prominent items among these are valves of various specifications. In addition, delays have also been experienced in supply of pneumatic fittings, doors, hatches, and transformers. Moving on to the challenges associated with the management of Cat C and C star items. DME specs, NES, ASTM, and other reference standards clearly spell out the material specs to be conformed to. These specs include the chemical composition, mechanical properties, conformance to casting and forging quality class. Emphasis on using virgin metals or approved scrap is also specified. While the documentation is comprehensive enough, the only way of verifying the conformance to these specs is by scrutiny of the test certificates from NABL accredited laboratories submitted by the vendors. Instances of items failing the checks by QA team or post-fitment on board, in spite of holding a valid NABL certificate, are observed often in the shipyards. In the present system, there exists no scrutiny of the proficiency of NABL accredited laboratories. DME specs and SQAP specify radiographic testing of components manufactured through casting. This is a positive method for detecting porosity, inclusions, cracks, and voids in the internal structure of the components. However, many a time, the components are cleared based on the RT reports without scrutinizing the RT films thoroughly, since only a qualified technician can scrutinize and interpret RT films. As a result, there are instances of items getting cleared at the inspection stage and subsequently failing due to material defects. It is therefore essential that interpretation of RT films is conducted by qualified personnel. QAP specify the components or the critical region of components for which radiographic testing is mandatory. QAP is also referred to the certain standards which specify the procedure to be followed for radiographic examination and acceptance. Inclusion of reference standards in the QAPs or the TSPs of the drawing does not necessarily guarantee a flawless radiographic examination, because the selection of the right reference value or a parameter is left to the interpretation of the technician of the laboratory who's carrying out the radiographic examination. Instead, if the same conditions can be specified in the QAPs, it can help the manufacturers to choose the right enable accredited lab which has the capability to perform the testing specified. Further, such QAPs bring out the testing specifications very objectively, leaving no ambiguity for the interpretation by the technician. It is observed that there is a long waiting time at the type testing agencies. A close look at the type testing requirements reveal that majority of the tests can be performed in the manufacturer's premises itself. Very few tests like ABN and SBN measurement, shock test, or chemical composition of the material actually require the expertise or infrastructure of an external agency. Shipyards can identify, in consultation with the Navy, enable accredited labs which have the capability to undertake various type tests. By these steps, the time delay for carrying out type testing being experienced in the ongoing projects can be contained. Many internal components of valves and pumps like seals, soft seats, gland packings, O-rings, and gaskets are manufactured with polymer-based materials. These are generally COTS items and are cleared at inspection stage based on test certificates provided by the suppliers. During the pressure testing conducted by the inspection agencies or the shipyards, items fail the test due to leaks from the seals due to failure of these soft components. The issue brought out regarding unreliable lab certification is relevant for these components as well. Further, the shelf life of these polymer-based components is limited, whereas on many occasions, these components end up lying in the manufacturer stores followed by shipyard stores for a very long time. Because of this long layoff time, they would have outlived their shelf life before they are tested or fitted on board, thereby leading to failures. There are a number of checks which are to be witnessed by the QAE with 100% quantum of check as per the QAPs. In addition, there are numerous other serials where sample checks are to be conducted. Besides, there is a large quantum of documentation which needs to be scrutinized by the CQAE on-site along with the checks. It can be inferred that the load on QA teams with respect to inspection of CAT-C items is enormous and does not commensurate with the limited manpower available. It therefore invariably leads to a situation where these critical checks are undertaken only for partial quantity. Quality assurance of CAT-C items is the responsibility of the shipyards. However, there are some CAT-C items for which the QA cover is to be provided by the CQAE as per the current format. The intent of categorizing items under CAT-C is to speed up the process of their supply by reducing the timelines involved for obtaining Navy's approval for the drawings and QAPs and CQAE inspection. In order to address the overload on CQAE and the associated delays, it is recommended that QA cover for all CAT-C items be made the responsibility of the shipyards, who in turn are to ensure it through suitable class or suitable third-party agencies. I shall be covering a few challenges which are related to the MSMEs. The public procurement policy for micro and small enterprises order was issued by the Ministry of MSME in 2012, and an amendment order was issued in 2018. As per these orders, a list of 350 items reserved for purchase from micro and small enterprises has also been promulgated. In order to conform to these guidelines, the shipyards are bound to place orders for these reserved category items on MSEs mandatorily. Over and above the reserved items, there are many other CAT-C items which are generally manufactured and supplied by the MSMEs. Therefore, it emerges that the CAT-C item suppliers arena is dominated by the MSMEs. In the recent shipbuilding projects, instances of a few MSMEs not able to honor the contracts awarded by the shipyards have come to light. It is observed that some of these firms actually quote with minimal margins to emerge as L1 and end up bagging multiple orders. However, they do not have adequate capacity to produce the numbers in the required timelines, resulting in delays. Also, to make good for the low quotes, the firms end up compromising on quality of raw materials, manufacturing processes, sourcing of quality subcomponents, etc. As a result, their products face a high rejection rate during CQAE or TPH checks. The high rejection rate, coupled with COVID-induced escalation of prices of raw materials, particularly of iron and copper, put insurmountable financial burden on the vendors. Consequently, the vendors back out without honoring the contracts. Some shipbuilding projects are conceived to be shared between two shipyards, wherein one shipyard becomes the lead shipyard. The lead shipyard is mandated to execute the construction of the first or initial few platforms. In such projects, it is a general practice for the second shipyard to place orders on the same set of vendors as the lead shipyard. This has led to a situation wherein the orders are accumulated with the vendors who either do not have the capacity or financial health to honor the contracts. In addition to the issues discussed so far, there are a few other issues pertaining to MSMEs which affect the warship production. Firms do not procure and stock adequate raw material for ensuring timely supply of products. Instead, they carry out the production as and when the raw material is available at affordable price, which in turn causes avoidable delays in delivery of items. Over the last 2 to 3 years, the emphasis on compliance of all transactions to GEM has steadily increased. While the firms established within the ecosystem of the shipyards have got used to the GEM procedures, the new entrants find it difficult to sync with the procedures, leading to a lot of avoidable delays in processing various stages of contracts. Also, the technical discrepancies on GEM platform itself also hamper the procurement by shipyards. It is observed that not many bigger firms participate in the bidding process pertaining to CAT-C items. Some of the salient reasons are flashed on the slide. They cannot compete with MSMEs in quoting lower prices for the requisite standards and quality. Secondly, the quantities required by the shipyards for warship building projects are small and spread over a long duration, and the bigger firms do not find it economical to take up these orders. Procedural delays involved in various stages of the contract, including obtaining approvals for the drawings, TSPs, QAPs, either from the shipyards or multiple agencies in the Navy, customer hold points during stage inspections, processing of the payments, etc., discourage the bigger firms from bidding. It is observed that there is no robust mechanism of monitoring and following up the orders by the shipyards once the contract is concluded. The firms keep coming back to the shipyard seeking extensions of the delivery period, and shipyards are not left with an option other than obliging them. Not exercising a check on such extensions, even if it is related to non-critical items, can manifest into major delays in the project. Also, a genuine assessment of the capacity and capability of the vendors prior placing orders will go a long way in identifying the right firms for the project. While DME 463 is very comprehensive and defines the specifications clearly, it may take some more time for the vendors to fully comply with it, particularly in light of the fact that the valve manufacturing vendor base is not very broad. COVID not only led to the loss of 2 valuable years, but also destabilized the financial standing of many MSMEs involved in valve manufacturing. As a result, the orders placed in the recent years just before the onset of COVID have got extremely delayed. I would like to present a case study on a warship construction project which is underway in 2 different shipyards, bringing out some of the issues discussed so far. Hull valves of the ships under this project had NABL lab certificate for casting and chemical analysis, but during the pressure testing at shipyard, leaks were observed through the valve body, indicating defective casting or material defects. Similarly, the polymer-based internal components of hull valves had requisite test certificates. However, they failed during pressure testing at shop floor due to leaks from seals, indicative of failure of the polymer-based internals. Matching plug sheets of emergency supply system, which are made of rubber components, had test certificates but had shown repeated failures. The valve manufacturers have been approaching a Visakhapatnam-based type testing agency, which offers to undertake the complete set of tests. However, due long queue, it is observed that there is a long waiting time for getting the type testing of a new valve done. All hull valves and line valves of diameter above 100 millimeters are required to undergo CQA inspection in this project, despite being classified as Cat C star. Doors and hatches, transformers, emergency connection changeover boxes are the other examples of the items which are classified as Cat C and C star, yet have CQA inspection mandatory. A few firms which are the contract for supply of valves, transformers, lip castings, doors and hatches have backed out of their contracts. In addition, certain other firms who have the contracts for supply of valves, transformers, and navigation lights are found to be delinquent firms who have not been honoring the contracts of the shipyard. Orders for valves have been placed by the lead shipyard on certain firms. Subsequently, the second shipyard also placed orders in the same firms. This has led to accumulation of orders with these firms, and they have not been able to honor the contracts of both the shipyards, leading to delay in the project. Certain recommendations to address the issues which I have discussed. Identification of reputed NABL accredited labs in various cities where Cat C manufacturing units are located is extremely important. Shipyards must specify test certification exclusively from these labs as a special condition in the RFPs. In case some items fail post-certification, issues must be taken up with the Quality Council of India to investigate the shortcoming with that lab. Also, test certification of polymer-based internals needs to be scrutinized stringently by the shipyards, and the long layout periods need to be contained. It is recommended that in-house capability to analyze the RT films be augmented by training personnel from the shipyard QC teams. In the instances when items fail in the shop floor test or on board, these films should be scrutinized in-house again to examine if the failures are attributable to the quality of the material. Shipyards can also outsource the interpretation of radiographic films to firms specialized in this field so that accurate analysis and reporting is done. In order to ensure flawless radiographic examination with no ambiguities, it is recommended that specifications regarding the procedure of conducting the RT as well as to accept the item be specified objectively in the QAPs by the shipyards. It is recommended that OEMs be encouraged to set up some of the type testing facilities in their own premises. These facilities can also be set up by a consortium of vendors with common requirements. Vendors can approach external agencies only for particular tests which need expertise and special infrastructure. These steps will address an important bottleneck pertaining to long waiting time with the type testing agencies. Feasibility of concluding rate contracts for supply of critical Cat C items be explored. These RCs can be concluded for a duration of 4 to 5 years, depending on the projects in pipeline with the shipyard. This will offer a long-term commitment to the vendors with adequate orders. Feasibility of placing part orders to different firms can also be explored. This will ensure that orders are not accumulated with one vendor, and even if one vendor slips its committed timelines, there is a backup readily available for supply of the same item and the project does not suffer. Major delays have been encountered in the current warship building projects, mainly due to delayed supply of valves. It is therefore recommended that statistics highlighting the implication of these delays be compiled and a proposal be taken up with the Ministry of MSMEs to issue a waiver to the shipyards for sourcing the valves meant for warship construction from a broader vendor base without restricting to MSMEs as per the reserved category of the public procurement policy order. This can pave way for bigger firms to participate in the bidding and offer the shipyards a wider vendor base for sourcing valves. It is recommended that QA cover for all Cat C and Cat C star items be delegated as the responsibility of the shipyards. The shipyards, in turn, are required to ensure the same through third-party inspection agencies. This would speed up the process of procurement by avoiding the procedural delays and ease out the burden on the overloaded CQE. It is very crucial that a genuine assessment of potential vendors with respect to their capacity and capability be undertaken by the shipyards prior to placing orders. Further, once an order is placed with the shipyards, there should be a mechanism in place to follow with the firms regularly to assess if the contract is progressing as per the design timelines. Some of the material defects are attributable to the poor quality of castings which are sourced from small-time foundries. The MSMEs cannot afford to source the castings from bigger foundries whose MOQs are very large. Therefore, in projects which have multiple ships to be built, it is recommended that feasibility of sourcing the castings in bulk for all the ships together be explored. This will ensure larger quantities which can match the MOQs of the bigger and reputed foundries. The lead shipyard can be nominated to undertake the sourcing for all the ships and issue the castings to either the manufacturing firms or the second shipyard as pre-issue material. It has been about 8 years after DME Specs 463 have been promulgated for valves. It is recommended that the feedback on the issues faced by the shipyards and valve manufacturers while conforming to the specs be obtained and evaluated. If any recommendations emerge which can improve the document further, the same can be incorporated by the Navy. With this, I come to the deck presentations.
Thank you, Sudhakar. I would like to now throw open the house for questions. Request the individual to please state his name. Keep the questions to probably just about a line or two, and preferably any particular speaker you would like to address to answer your question. Thank you. First question.
Thank you very much for these. Thank you very much for these nice presentations. My question is on ship design of the future. Now, increasingly, we are seeing the adoption of technologies such as digital twins for equipment and predictive maintenance features in the design of ships itself. I want to understand from both the two shipyards here, how much of this is being embedded in your production plans, particularly for the design for the digital twins of equipment and predictive maintenance related to the integrity of the hull. So these are things that are already available using technologies of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I want to understand, are we doing that? Because this is now a feature of most modern warship building projects. Thank you.
By the way, that was Commodore Samadar.
Being very specific to that, we have our design team is exploring how to go about this, and maybe for the future projects that are on the annual, we will look into it depending on the sophistication. You may be aware that we are already having, that is GRSC and MDL have virtual reality labs with D&D also having the same feature, which is being well used for the P17 Alpha project. Now, coming to use of artificial intelligence, I just wanted to tell Sudhakar that GRSC has just started doing AI-based RT inspection of welds. So it's already happening. And yes, definitely there will be progress in leaps and bounds in the near future. Thank you, sir. Jen, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one point from my side. Though we talk about digital twin and all, but the bottom line is, it's the scenario. If you look at it's competitive. Everything has a cost to it. And though we are exploring these options, as GRS is also doing that, we are in talk with the firms how this can be implemented. but the cost implications are the ones which are a hindrance towards adoption of these technologies. And coming to the point of artificial intelligence, yes, a lot of initiatives have been taken. In fact, it is being driven right from the top. That is Government of India. We are having almost weekly reviews, and our director, Captain Jagmohan, is quite stressed about it. Yes, we have a lot of targets to meet. In fact, a lot of initiatives have been taken in the past. We have done a AI-based predictive maintenance successfully for a Coast Guard ship which is running on an MTU engine. The same we are trying to replicate on Aditya. Another couple of other things have been done, and plus we have done autonomous boat in collaboration with Bell. So a lot of initiatives are happening, but yes, this is the future to go to look. And a lot of technologies, AI-based technologies and systems will get embedded into the ship systems in the future. Thank you.
I have a question for Commander. What I would like to ask is that talking about exporting ships and particularly exporting naval ships, and you talked about the patrol craft, all that. So my assessment is that we in a country we have a capacity shortfall even to meet the Indian Navy's requirement. The Navy's requirement of ships, and we need to work on bringing down the times and how quickly we can build ships and meet the MCPP requirements of the Navy itself. So how do we balance that? Well, it is definitely a desirable thing that yes, we export our ships also. We have the numbers. It will help us develop our shipbuilding. But how do we balance that? It shouldn't happen that we start focusing on export and where we continue to slide in the meeting our own requirements. So where we draw the line and where we prioritize that.
Yes, sir. Now, if you look at, I will talk about GSL per se, sir. Now, whatever capacity we can do 14 hull ships, 14 ships concurrently, 8 at hull construction stage and 6 at outfitting stage. And we are just about concurrently doing 5 to 6 ships. And if you look at the model which is being followed by all shipyards, be it MDL or GRSE, if you look at the hulls, they are being done entirely outside. Like they have outsourced to Shaft. GRSE is getting done to L&T, and I believe Chogli also I think is in the fray with MDL. So these smaller shipyards are complementing the capacity of the shipyards. So while the core work stays with the shipyard, with the support of these the smaller shipyards and the ancillary industry, I'm quite sure and quite confident. Being in this industry, I can state very confidently that more work related to exports can be taken on without compromising on the timelines for the Indian shipbuilding projects. Please, sir.
Commodore Rajan Veer, Indian Maritime Foundation. I think it was mentioned by more than one speaker that the role of embassies should be enhanced in boosting export. Now, embassies have commercial attaches, and some embassies have naval attaches. Now, with the emphasis on maritime affairs in our country, by the government, is it envisaged, or would it not be better to have, good to have a maritime attaché in some of the embassies where exports can be boosted, or is it left to the commercial attaché to do that? I think that's an aspect we need to look at the government level. That even some selected countries which where we are trying to boost our exports, warship exports. And shipping and ports also comes into it. So the maritime attaché in some of the countries would help a great deal in this work. And my second question is on indigenization. It was mentioned that certain items are notified for imports are stopped. And no, this is must be a process going on from time to time as the indigenization has improved. So I would like to know some specific items where, if you can tell us, where the imports were stopped and indigenization was carried out in the due frame of time. And so that's if you, I think Commander Jain would probably be the Captain Jain. Thank you.
Sir, what I personally feel for the embassies, usage of embassies, utilization of the diplomatic channels. Instead of commercial attaches, I feel defense attaches can do a better job in the sense they have better connect with the military and the naval setup there. So they can get better leads. Once a lead is available, that can be passed on to the shipyards or the private industry, whatever concern may be. Then connect can be established and then this can be facilitated. Primarily because in being the role of defense attaché, they are interacting day in and day out with the military setup there. They have access to the higher echelons there. So their approach is better. So, and in fact, a lot of good work has been done in the past. I'm privy to it. The defense attaché's role has certainly transformed. Now we see a sea change in their attitude, the way they approach, the way they are facilitating. In fact, they are proactive. They are communicating directly to the shipyard saying, okay, do this. I know this can happen. This guy has got a requirement of this. This guy is available who can facilitate. This guy is who can do the job for you. In fact, this is the shipyard available there who can do a manufacture. You give your design, he can do it there. So I'm saying is they have a more broader view or to facilitate this export thing. And it's working well. It's just a matter of time. It should get realized into orders also.
Sir, just to give you an example of indigenization, one of the two things that comes to my mind is what we are doing at GRSE is a data acquisition and processing system for the survey vessels, which earlier used to be imported or something. And then some halo hangers and shutters for those. A few examples of indigenous these things.
Few more to add, sir. Some certain space required for the overall of the gas turbines, which we undertake in XLR, sir. It is a big component of them we are able to indigenize and use them for quite some time now, sir, for gates as well as gas turbines.
With regard to your point of maritime attaches, we could request the Vice Chief to take away from this questions. Anybody else? Yeah.
Good morning, sir. I'm Commander Vivekanand from headquarters WNC. We were having a lot of various challenges. We are discussing about more of tangible challenges. Perhaps I have a different perspective of from the HR perspective about, in fact, on the areas of concern, we were indicating about the core expertise or lackness in about the talents or about the people who are actually with the shipbuilding industry, how many talents are there? I'm actually coming to that. Like with the present scenario, there are a lot of veterans after 20 years of good experience. They are not getting into the shipbuilding industries, or rather they are joining either the corporates, like that is the recent trends of joining Amazon, Flipkart and various aspects. But why not on the top echelons, we don't have any experienced personnel sitting over on the Ministry of Defense or in the shipbuildings, where we have to make it as the national assets of so many people, even after superannuation are readily available, but they are not getting into the shipbuilding industry and we are not focusing on the financial growth. So this question, it's not actually a question, it's an open discussion forum for anyone. So this is what which I was thinking in my mind. So that's the reason I have posted this. Good day.
Maybe you could discuss this post the session over lunch with people. Maybe you get some answers there. Because it's very generic, it's not very pertinent to what we have discussed today. Anybody else? Yeah, please.
My 2 pence. Firstly, thank you very much for a very enlightening presentation by all 3 speakers. I'm especially thankful to Captain Sudhakar for bringing out a very topic which is very close to my heart, and the Navy has been suffering because of this. So my question is very simple. As Admiral Subhadev may recall that we had appointed one logistic officer in every WOT. That is primarily to capture the data of the correct data in the D787, especially for the firms which is contracted by the shipyard Cat C, Cat D items. Has the process has been formalized? Because Navy had never been able to source those items correctly, and we have to go get it manufactured as a sample and then put them into the system. So I just want to know that the correct identification of these items into with the correct part numbers has the process been final.
Sorry, may I please? I'm Commodore Arvind Raval, CO Shivaji, but in my previous capacity as PDME and before at DME. So, sir, that was done in 2013-14 and with a lot of fanfare, but it's not actually met the required or the requisite mandate that it had. The reason being, the main mandate of the thing was there should be nothing which is, which is left to the shipyard or should left to the ship to raise a IF. 100% of data should be captured in ILMS, and any ship could demand anything, whether it's a Cat A, B, C, or a shipyard procured item. But it could not be met, sir, because the problem happened was the final piping of all this happens at DLS. So whatever data that logistic officer could collate at the shipyard, that data, when it went to DLS and it could not be pumped in there, even a small issue up there, a small string not matching doesn't pump in any of the data. It's the same again going back to such mid 80s and the 90s when we all started computers. Whatever we did, whatever small program we wrote, it said, bad word or bad command. And nothing, half of us could not learn computers because we could not go beyond that. So that is the problem again with the pumping in this list and this thing in ILMS, because ILMS and this handshake never happened. Later on, the professional directorates got in touch with the OEMs directly. Some of the OEMs are forthcoming in coming to DLS directly with their own CDs and sort out these issues which are there. But it happened only in case of 20-30% of items. Today also 15 Bravo is the latest ship which has been commissioned. Still there are signals flying around of NA not available, not incatted, and ship to raise IF. So this is what we need to counter, sir.
Last question, please.
I'm Commander Kulkarni. I worked for close to 20 years in the offshore after my naval service. What I found was the offshore supply vessels came from Norway, the dredgers and tugs came from China, and to my horror, bulk carriers came from Bangladesh. I want to know why this order was not placed on Indian shipyards.
Sir, I am volunteering to take this question, but the problem is that the shipyard, it's like presently the defense shipyards, yes, most of them are executing defense orders, and the spare capacity is now being used to look at the ships in the domestic or other commercial, this thing like ferries and carriers and things like that, which is a recent phenomenon. Maybe, sir, 10-15 years ago, the the defense shipyards are really not looked into commercial, building commercial things. And today, when I'm looking at building dredgers and bulk carriers, what people are asking, especially the foreign owners, the Indians are not even asking, are looking at proven vessels, which is slightly difficult today because we are just starting off doing these things, except for maybe Cochin Shipyard. So that is what I have to say on the subject. And we are in touch with the national agencies which engage ships for building ships for them.
Just to add to that, I think you see the DPSUs to get into private shipbuilding, it's not such an easy task. So since we have Mr. Patil from L&T here, maybe he could answer as to why he didn't take on the bulk carrier order.
CMD HSL here. HSL was a shipyard, as everybody knows, 80 years old, and it was making commercial vessel. And it came under MOD in only 2011. So to answer to your question, the point is that there are two ways of building ships. One way is commercial driven, which means where the decisions are taken based on commercial, whether it is sub-vendor, vendor, customer, owner, everything is driven by commercial, as is the commercial market. The second way of building ship is with the help of rules, where you have CVC, you have auditors, you have CAG, you have RTI, you have objections, you have ministry, you have monitoring, etc., that we have all heard in last 1.5 hours. We were governed by the rules, and we are still being governed by rules. It is not easy to do away with the rules when the shipyard is a DPSU shipyard, whether it is under Ministry of Shipping or under Ministry of Defense. The degree of questions, the degree of answerability may vary. The degree of freedom to take decision may vary, but the plethora of rules is very, very different. And the DPSUs also carry an agenda of the old lineage of socialistic regime, whether it is recruitment, employment, it is promotion of MSMEs, it is GEM portal, you name it. We are the carriers of government policies and agencies, and rightly so, I respect it. So to answer was that the commercial ships wants delivery on time, and the rule in commercial shipbuilding is if you don't deliver in time, the vendor has the right to cancel the order. And the Indian shipyards, because of this particularly DPSUs, were not geared up to deliver a ship, a dredger or a bulk carrier in a matter of 2 years and 18 months. That challenge was there then, that challenge is there even today. Thank you.
And I would also like to add, in the shipbuilding, it is a single global market with information symmetry. Commodore Nair, ex-director shipbuilding of Garden Bridge Shipbuilders and Engineers. It's a single global market with information symmetry. So the world looks at only one thing. In the most of the cases, the first priority is price. The second priority is the time. And the third priority is quality. So these are the three aspects in the order of merit, which actually qualify as to which particular shipbuilder gets the order or not. That is why the Chinese have been getting it faster than anybody else. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, I would like to thank all the speakers for giving us a very informative talk. I would like to summarize what they have said because I think they've all expressed their point of views very, very explicitly. But suffice to say that we all talked about the necessity of having an industrial economic ecosystem which will be geared towards progressing the shipbuilding industry. We've also talked about the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan and the self-reliance factors which are very important. And some very interesting statistics have been thrown up, which probably indicates to us why we stand today as probably a non-starter in the global market, despite having not a bad order book in terms of shipbuilding as such is concerned. Though I must confess here that this order book is more geared towards
warship building rather than commercial building. Personally, I have also been in shipbuilding for close to about 15 years in the Navy. And to me, the state of the shipbuilding industry, especially the private shipbuilding industry, continues to languish what it was 3 decades back and what it is today. And therefore, I feel it becomes very important that this sector gets its due recognition. Whilst in the Navy, this point was thrown up to us as to how we could look at increasing orders for the private shipyards, how we could sort of resurrect this industry. And one of the points, after a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, we decided that we will open up a few projects, especially not so weapon intensive ships, both to the private sector as well as to the government shipyards. Accordingly, we did pass on these tenders to both of them on a competitive basis. And unfortunately, none of the private shipyards could bag an order. We were quite surprised in the Navy. There was much angst about it as to why this has happened. There were lots of reasons which were thrown up. I won't like to get into these reasons at this forum, but the private shipbuilding industry continued to languish where it is. So maybe if I have to roll back the years and be in the decision-making process at that point in time, instead of saying that we should open up to both the government and the private shipyards, I think with the type of an MCPP which is there, which is talking about 200 ship navy by 2030, I think we need to take a call. It's a rather drastic call, and that drastic call would be that there are some class of ships we open up only to the private shipyards on a competitive basis. Which these projects are have to be discussed within the Navy, which suits the Navy from the point of view of integrations, etc. And to me, I think this is the need of the hour today if we have to look at this industry to survive. An interesting fact is if you look at the MOS report of 2021, and has also been brought up by ex-naval chief, this report consists of close to about 130 pages. And out of this 130 pages, only 3 pages are dedicated to shipbuilding. That is the state we are in. Unfortunate, but that is where we are. And therefore, it becomes very important that we need to recognize shipbuilding as a strategic industry. Everybody talks about this vast coastline that we have. Probably geography is amazed as to why this sector has not picked up in our country. And I look at it that in case the impetuses are given to this sector, you would be looking at skill development for the youth. You would be looking at increased job prospects. You would be looking at being compliant to the Atmanirbhar schemes. We would be looking at boosting the ocean-based blue economy. And most importantly, as has been brought up by the various speakers, we would be looking at creation of the ancillary, which in turn would mean a boost to the Indian economy. So that to me is the key. And what is the remedy? Now, this opinion is my very personal opinion. And I personally feel just like what the Vice Chief said, but I would probably go a step forward. He said, and I feel that it is essential that today, if we have to revive this very key industry, we need to create a separate ministry. It could be a small ministry. We need to have some funding for it, an annual funding plan so that there is accountability. We're going to have some good minds sitting in that industry, which would look at what sort of tax incentives we need to give, what sort of policies which need to get develop certain financial platforms which are favorable in boosting this industry. Because today we are not even, if I may use the words rather drastically, as I said, we are not even anywhere near being we are a far cry from it. And we need to do something drastically because this continues to languish for the last 2 to 3 decades and we need to push this really properly. So I feel that this creation with funding becomes absolutely essential. A lot of people do this comparison. We look at comparing with the automobile sector. But when you look at the automobile sector, that's a sector which is very, very largely dependent on domestic requirements, and therefore it's different. People talk about our friendly neighbor, how he has progressed in this industry. But to me, comparisons are a bit skewed, because to have meaningful comparisons, it's very essential that the playing field or the environment has to be like to like. So this is my take on this, and as I said, it's a very personal view. But finally, I'd like to thank all the speakers for, again, a very nice talk. And customary fashion, I would request all of you to give them a good hand.